right to highlight this issue. The Chamber, another business organization, highlighted recently that in the past 5 years, social insurance, and this is their figure, social insurance has gone up 38%. We also know that water has gone up by 39% and electricity by 50%. All of this affects the bottom line. And thinking particularly of Main Street, our retail hub, and how best to enhance an already fantastic retail experience, we'll soon unveil reductions in business rates and import duties designed to make it even more attractive. And all of this with an ear both to you and to the Chamber as the relevant representative bodies. For example, we've also heard your call for an Office of Fair Trading. You've been calling for it for some time, and we will deliver it if we become the government of Gibraltar after the next election. And I'd be grateful if Peter could tell us why it is that in the past 16 years of your calling for this office, he has not felt that it was something that should be done with a priority. But anyway, all of this works in the future if we heed your central call to foster a culture of entrepreneurship. With the new bank that we will establish by developing the Gibraltar Savings Bank, we will work with you on business startup schemes, small business loans, and all of this by a minister with specific responsibility with small businesses who will chair a small business board that will include public sector representatives to deliver the best possible services to the private sector and to the public. Because let's face it, you are our economic engine. It should not be the government of Gibraltar that is the driver of economic growth. It should be the private sector. Much of our income and many of our professionals work in, and the income comes from the financial services. I work in financial services myself, and you will see that our plans in our manifesto hold faithful to much of what you have set out in your business agenda and the Finance Centre Council wish list for these general elections, because there's nothing unreasonable in there. It's all sensible, thought out, potentially fantastic suggestions for the future of Gibraltar. You know, growing the marketing reach of our Finance Centre department and spreading the news of what Gibraltar can do at the financial services level is exactly what it must be about. And I believe that that's actually something which will be common ground between the three of us tonight. I just want to say that on the implementation of the new Tax Act, you may have seen our press release today talking about issues affecting self-employed individuals and companies that have suffered penalties. These are issues that need to be addressed because it's not about people not wanting to pay their fair share. Nobody would defend somebody who wants to dodge their taxes. It's that we have to give them the time to get used to the new system and to implement it in a fair and equanimous way. And of course, in understanding all of these issues and in fostering a culture of entrepreneurship, what we cannot do is forget the tourist industry. It's been, in my view, something never nurtured as it should have been, and it needs to be the real pillar of the economy that it can be into the future. It brings customers to the retail trade in Main Street. It brings customers to the catering trade in our city. Now, all of this has to be done in the context of developing a one-stop shop for the registration of labour in particular, because we cannot have people saying that they don't bother to register workers because it's too complicated. If somebody doesn't register a worker because it's too complicated, they're at fault for not doing so, but the system must also change to make it easier. All of us must agree tonight that illegal labour must be eradicated. And for the leader of the Socialist Party, I think that's the right place to stop. I'd ask you to look at our manifesto, to see all the policies that we're proposing. They are designed to deliver a better Gibraltar, in particular for you, the engines of our economy. Thank you very much.
this is so civilized. I thought you were all going to be running over time. This is excellent, making my job very easy. And just to remind you, in case you're not sure of the small print, each of the leaders will get an opportunity to make rebuttals, have a right to reply, or restate their original cases for 3 minutes after the first round of speeches is complete. Let's go to the third stage now and invite Peter Caruana to complete the 7.5-minute statements.
Well, good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen.
Peter, if I could just ask you to wait a few seconds while we reset the clock. And I'll fill for time by congratulating Gibraltar on the magnificent victory over the England C football team quite recently. And I know that previously you'd beaten the Faroe Islands. You did England 3-1. This has got to be good. You'll be in UEFA before you know it. Peter, all ready to go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good evening again, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. We have also looked at your GFSB manifesto, and it has inspired many of our manifesto proposals, although I can't eulogize it quite as much as the previous speaker. There are things in it which I don't think can work for Gibraltar as a whole, and therefore which we have not reflected in our manifesto, but much of it is indeed there. And of course, it's always harder for the incumbent in government to come and explain what they're going to do new, always open to the requisite that you might have done it before. But still, there has been success in the past. The economy of Gibraltar has grown hugely. Much has been done for business. I share the opening remarks about the importance of business, small businesses and all private sector business to our economic prospects, and therefore it's always incumbent to do more. Our manifesto has got quite a lot of specific proposals, which I will take you over very quickly now. First of all, a dedicated ministry, not just for small businesses, but for businesses and enterprise as a whole. In Gibraltar, it's too difficult to identify what is a small business as opposed to other businesses. So a dedicated ministry for business and enterprise. The Federation has asked to join the Finance Centre Council. We don't think that's a good idea, nor indeed for the Chamber or the trade unions to be allowed to join the Finance Centre Council. The Finance Centre Council is not an umbrella of representative bodies. It's an umbrella organization of specific sectors of financial services deliverers. And the discussions are very technical about financial services products. Our alternative is a business council, because we understand that there are issues in relation to financial services that interest the Federation of Small Businesses. Indeed, there are many financial services providers who are members of the Federation of Small Businesses. So what we're proposing is a business council that will bring together government, the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation itself, the Finance Centre Council, the Gibraltar Betting and Gaming Association, and any other economically relevant representative bodies to meet on an ongoing and permanent regular basis. We're going to suggest bi-monthly meetings, but that can be agreed to discuss all issues of interest, government policies, business requirements, opportunities, threats, ways of responding to them, etc. Our manifesto will also contain a specific proposal to set up business incubators. We need a mechanism in Gibraltar to encourage young entrepreneurs to take the plunge without getting over-worried about the initial investment in costs that do not relate directly to the business that they want to set up. So we're proposing a business incubator system where they can share managed office, managed common resources, manage central costs that are not fundamental to the particular business for a period of time whilst they get their small business idea off the ground, or at least test it without risking too much peripheral capital on peripheral costs, supported by a proposal for a small business startup package, which would consist, amongst other things, of small business loan guarantees, time and quantity limited tax, social insurance contribution, holidays and discounts, an element of wage subsidy, one-stop shop licensing and registration, all for a period of a determined period whilst the business is given an opportunity to start. That has got to be carefully balanced against the need not to destabilize the market by giving the startup help for too long in a way that could develop into unfair competition with established incumbent operators. A sufficiently empowered Office of Fair Trading. Fabian has taunted me, as I suggested in my opening line, to say why we haven't done it so far. Well, there has been a Consumer Standards Office, and there has been a fair amount of interaction between government and unions, and government and the Federation and the Chamber of Commerce about getting tough on defaulters. Quite a lot of work has been done. Not enough of it has been successful. So what we're now proposing is an independent and empowered Office of Fair Trading set up by statute, which can do not just the making sure that your competitors comply with their legal obligations in employment, employee tax, that sort of thing, but indeed also make sure, as the Federation has called, that the government's tender process is fair and that things that the government does that perhaps destabilizes the market should not happen. I'm a great fan of zero tolerances of non-compliance. Last time we got tough on this, we were accused by another business organization of taking draconian measures. So apparently, draconian measures are not an acceptable way of making people comply with their business obligations, their legal obligations. I personally don't agree, but we have to decide whether we mean business on this question of zero tolerance, in which case draconian measures should be fine, because they should be acting as a deterrent. One of the recommendations of the Federation, which I do not accept, because I don't think it would eventually destabilize the public finances, is this business of utility fees only going up by the rate of inflation. That means that the government would have to absorb an even higher share of the real cost increases than we do now to swap increases in the price of oil, which could go up by much more than inflation, by the rate of inflation, would leave the general body of taxpayer, i.e. the government budget, taking, over a period of time, more strain than it should. But we do promise to carry on doing what we're doing now, which is to not passing all the costs, and therefore through that way delivering a significant subsidy, and I'll answer my opponent's comments in just a moment. We need more industrial units, which we will provide. We need a commercial vehicle park, which we will provide. We remain committed to a locally owned and controlled bank with such degree of government participation as may be necessary. We want a business Gibraltar outreach plan. The government, of course, has its specialist marketeers in financial services, but we want marketeers that can go to conferences and speak not just about financial services, gaming, tourism, and Gibraltar shopping experiences and all of that. A doubling of the cruise terminal, a building of a new fuel depot away from the city, which will bring bunker storage on shore. E-government, all your interactions should be with government, and e-commerce. We think that our gaming industry has brought to Gibraltar businesses which can actually be used to set Gibraltar up as a location for much of the support around the internet.
Peter, I'm going to have to interrupt you.
For that. You're shutting me up, Frank.
I'm afraid so. We've reached the 0 hour. But on balance, I think they were very well behaved in that first round. Okay, into the second round now, and this is the rebuttal, the replies. 3 minutes to each candidate, speaking in the same order as they did in the first round, which means that we start with Keith. And we have reset the clock. Take it when you can, Keith.
In terms of business, Gibraltar needs a government that is business-friendly, that is competent, and that safeguards Gibraltar's reputation. When you come to vote and you've got to consider the business program in each party's manifesto, check out those credentials and check out the people who stand behind those parties and decide whether they are competent, business-friendly, and can safeguard the reputation of Gibraltar, because without those elements, business will suffer. And don't let people tell you that there are only 2 choices at this election. This is a 3-horse race, And there are three choices at this election. A choice between a step forward into a progressive future with the PDP, the status quo with the GSD, or a return to the past with the GSLP. This is a very different election for us. We have a full slate, and there is a new GSLP leader. Side by side with that, we have a GSD that is, in our view, burnt out with a weaker team. We are a party that is friendly to business, that has experience of the law and of business and of government. That I know we have a competent team with the credentials to serve Gibraltar. Look at the alternatives, look at the programs of government. And if you want change, be careful about the change that you choose, and choose real change, real and safe change. And remember, one of the key elements that I've outlined, in my view, is reputation. Reputation is a key. Peter Montegrifo first in 1996 to 2000, and then I invested a lot of time in 2000 when I took over in financial services to rebuild and consolidate the torn reputation of Gibraltar in financial services. We were successful, but we don't want to go back to those days. We want to go forward. And if we want a change that goes forward, the only change that will go forward is the PDP that does not contain in its team people who were there in 1996 that took Gibraltar to the brink of a collapse in its reputation. We promise real and safe change that will assist the business sector in our very detailed program for government that is outlined in our manifesto and is available in our Pledge to flyer that is available online already. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabian. We can crack straight on now. We've mastered the technology and we can reset the clock immediately at 3 minutes. And the second rebuttal comes from Fabian. Oh, it started. We'll give you an extra, whatever you need. You start when you like, and
Thank you very much for the opportunity to reply to both the previous speakers. I want to say that there is a lot of common ground in what Keith said in his original statement, but obviously not much in what he said in his reply. Well, in particular, given that Keith says that his policies represent a real change and a step forward and not a return to the past. Well, Keith, you and I know as well as each other that much of what you're saying is what we used to talk about in the mid-90s. So it's much further back than just you suggest now. But anyway, let's move on to where the real battle is. My principal political opponent, Mr. Caruana, has told us that he believes that the GFSB should be as part of a business council. Actually, I think that that is not a bad idea. It's not a million miles away from what we're talking about as a small business board, and I think that's important, and you'll see that reflected in our manifesto. But I think it's also important that you should have your application or your suggestion to be members of the Finance Centre Council also supported, because I think every business, or just about every business on the Finance Centre Council, represented as bankers, as accountants, or as lawyers, or any of the other sectors represented there, really are small businesses, and you have something positive to contribute to that debate. So you will find us much more willing to entertain that suggestion with you. Finally, I think we are all tonight, and perhaps it's credit to the work you've done with your manifesto and with tonight, on the same page about the importance of small businesses. But Peter will forgive me for highlighting the fact that on page 56 of his last manifesto, he promised to develop a new bank, he promised to deliver e-government, and all of this was promised in 2007 and not yet delivered, and that's why you're having to ask it again. People say that politicians should not be trusted. I guess that's why, because we've had a government in Gibraltar for the past 16 years that has said it's going to do certain things and then has not done them. Like perhaps Peter will recall when he told the Chronicle and assembled journalists in May 2007 that he was going to be responsible with his government for developing a magnificent new air terminal. He told us then it would cost £24 million. Thank you very much.
Well, just to remind you that you'll get your chance to have your say and put your questions from the floor in the second part, which will reach after a 10-minute break, and after a series of 8 questions that have been carefully framed and worded by the GFSB over the last few days. A great credit to the organisation for bringing the 3 party leaders together in the same room for the first time in the 2011 election campaign. They've worked extremely hard to organise this evening, and I hope you're getting something out of it so far. So let's move to the second phase, which are the specific GFSB questions, and some of them... Oh, I'm so sorry. Goodness, yeah. I'm so sorry. Okay, I've just previewed. I won't have to tell you when we actually get there. So to our third rebuttal, and with 3 minutes in hand, the clock's already set, and I've looked like a complete fool. Here's Peter. At least you know what's coming up now. And,
well, Frank, I didn't get worried because I thought that, like me, you took the view that there wasn't much to rebut. But all right, perhaps.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Perhaps I got that. I called that wrong. Okay. Well, look. More time to consider the implications of the new legislation. The new legislation was years in the making. Organizations were carefully considered when it was published in draft form. We were asked by both business organizations in Gibraltar to give a time in the form of a penalty holiday to allow people to get their heads around the complicated new legislation. We agreed, and we gave a penalty holiday. So, Fabian, I don't think you can come here and say, as you have done, that many people have already suffered penalties under the new legislation. People can't have suffered new penalties under the new legislation because the holiday hasn't yet finished, and therefore there is already time given to get this right. You know, you can select statistics and prove almost anything just by the start and the finish day of them. Significant increase in utility bills in the last 4 years, 30%, said Keith. That is true. But consider the percentage increases that there have been in utility bills in other countries, the United Kingdom, much greater than that in the last 2 years, let alone in the last 4. And the difference between what we've increased and what the other countries have increased is the huge degree of subsidy